Is music haram in Islam? Among the four main madhabs, two say it is not haram, yet when we look at the most popular preachers on YouTube and social media, we often hear the same thing repeated: music is haram. But this is not the opinion shared by all Islamic scholars. Great scholars like Imam Ghazali, Ibn Hazm, Ibn Arabi, and Mevlana Rumi said that music is halal, or at least allowed, when it benefits the heart. Even well-known speakers on social media, such as Numan Ali Khan and Yasir Qadhi, clearly say that the evidence is debatable. And not all music can be considered haram. Yet, they are often criticized harshly for saying this. There is no direct ban on music in the Qur'an, though some tafsirs describe it as haram, and the Hadiths on this topic are also open to different interpretations. So there is no agreement. In fact, throughout history, there have been different opinions. Today, the Salafi and Wahhabi view has become more popular on YouTube, giving the false impression that there is only one opinion. But this is dangerous. It hides the richness of Islam and makes the religion look narrow, strict, and radical. Verses and hadiths are taken in a very limited way, which pushes young people and new Muslims away from the faith. In a moment, we will look together at the verses and hadiths about this topic. Even if you already have your own opinion, watch this video until the end to understand the full picture. You are watching Religious Story TV, the most watched English Islamic channel of the month. Subscribe now and don't miss our interesting Islamic topics and stories. If you are ready, let's begin. Today, we are putting a difficult question on the table. Actually, what makes this topic difficult is not the issue itself, but the way it is presented by some Islamic scholars close to extremist groups who have become very popular on YouTube and other social media platforms. They act as if Islam clearly declares music to be haram, and they make it sound like all four Sunni Madhhabs agreed on this. But the truth is very different. Among the four Madhhabs, Maliki and Hanbali say it is haram, while Hanafi and Shafi'i do not. So when someone claims that music is haram in Islam, it sounds manipulative, because it's as if the number of true madhabs was reduced to two, and the other two don't exist. It makes people wonder, have two madhabs suddenly been removed? Why are their opinions never mentioned? Many people believe what they hear in these YouTube fatwa videos without questioning. But the earlier Islamic scholars, when giving a fatwa, always considered the opinions of other madhabs as well. This becomes even more important when you speak on a platform like YouTube, which reaches the entire world and all madhabs. It is understandable that our Maliki and Hanbali brothers and sisters may not know about the other opinions, because in their madhabs, music is mostly considered haram, and that is what they grew up hearing. So, they might think there is a common agreement among all four madhabs. When popular YouTube preachers support this idea, their belief becomes even stronger. Then, they start accusing Muslims from other madhabs, claiming with certainty that they are committing haram. This leads to division and conflict among us. Today, we will not only explain that music is not considered haram in the Hanafi and Shafi'i madhabs, but also look at how hadiths, Qur'an verses, and many great Islamic scholars offer different interpretations. We want to share this with everyone who truly wants to understand the topic, because Islam is growing in the West and many people are becoming Muslim. We believe that opinions from past centuries, where some scholars forbade music due to their own social conditions, cannot be forced on Muslims living in today's Western world. In the past, music was mostly used in gatherings with alcohol and sin, so some scholars declared it haram. They also interpreted hadiths and verses differently, But today, music is used in many Islamic films, series and nasheeds. It has become a way to remember Allah, strengthen emotions, and bring people closer to faith. We believe that if those scholars who once forbade music were alive today, they might look at it from a cultural point of view, and some could even change their opinion. Even in those early centuries, great scholars like Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Ghazali, Mevlana Rumi, Ibn Arabi and Ibn Hazm did not call music haram. They either considered it makruh, disliked, or mubah, permissible, depending on its content and the environment. Especially in the Shafi tradition, great names like Imam Ghazali saw music as a means to bring the heart closer to Allah. He said that when music benefits the heart, it is mubah, even mustahab, recommended. Soon, we will take a closer look at the opinions of Imam Ghazali and many other great scholars who supported this view. Now let's take a brief look at the Qur'an, Hadiths, and how they were applied throughout Islamic history. Some scholars said that in the Qur'an, music is mentioned as one of the blessings of paradise, and that believers are even encouraged toward it. For example, in Surah Rum, verse 15, Allah says, "Those who believe and do righteous deeds will be in a garden, enjoying happiness." Scholars such as Yahya Kathir, Auza'i, and Waqi interpreted the word yuhbarun in this verse as joy and song. These interpretations are mentioned in Tabari's Jami al-Bayan and Abu Hayyan's Bahr al-Muhit. A similar idea appears in two other verses. In Surah Baqarah, verse 29, "It is Allah who created everything on earth for you." And in Surah An'am, verse 119, "Allah has made clear to you what He has forbidden." Ibn Hazm said that these verses mean everything on earth was created for human benefit. Unless there is a specific text, nas, that forbids something, it remains halal. Since there is no verse or hadith that directly bans music, it cannot be considered haram. He also explained that actions depend on intentions. If someone listens to music to disobey Allah, that person becomes sinful. But if the intention is good, there is no sin. According to authentic narrations, the Prophet ﷺ viewed music in light of the Qur'an's principles. He forbade music that led to sin, but allowed music that carried no harm. In some cases, he even listened and encouraged his companions to do the same. For example, Aisha radiallahu anha said, "On an Eid day, two girls were singing and playing the daf in my house. When Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu came in, he disapproved of it. The Prophet said, 'Leave them, it is a day of Eid.'" Bukhari, Eidine 2. In another narration, Aisha radiallahu anha said, "When she married off a woman from the Ansar, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, 'Aisha, there was no entertainment at our wedding. The Ansar love amusement.'" Bukhari, Nikah 63. It was narrated from Amir Saad, "I went to Karaza ibn Ka'b and Abu Mas'ud al-Ansari on the occasion of a wedding. A young girl was singing there. I said, 'You are the companions of the Messenger of Allah and from the people of Badr. How can this be happening in your presence?' They replied, 'You may stay with us or leave if you wish. We were allowed to have joy at weddings and to cry during times of hardship.'" Nasa'i, Nikah 80. Another narration from Tirmidhi says, "Announce the marriage, perform it in the mosques, and play the daf during the Nikah." Ibn Hajar narrated from Muhallab. This hadith shows that announcing weddings with the daf and permissible songs is allowed. A respected person in society may also attend such joyful weddings as long as they do not go beyond what is permissible. In Aini's Umdat al-Qari, he also wrote, "This hadith shows that it is allowed to announce weddings with the daf and permissible songs." Then he quoted from At-Tawdi, The scholars agreed that during wedding feasts, it is permissible to have entertainment accompanied by the daf and similar musical instruments. It was also narrated from Salama ibn al-Aqwa. "We were traveling with the Prophet to Khaybar at night. Someone from the group said to Amir ibn al-Aqwa, 'Sing something for us to listen to.' So Amir got down from his camel and started singing. The Prophet said, 'May Allah have mercy on Amir.'" Bukhari, Maghazi, 38. When the Prophet ﷺ migrated to Medina, the people welcomed him with the nasheed, "Tala al-Badru alayna." This was also a musical expression, and it was never forbidden. Music in the Islamic history. Historical sources mention that the great companion Ibn Jafar listened to songs and even composed music himself. Some reports also say that Muawiyah once saw a musical instrument near Ibn Jafar. Even though musical instruments were limited in that period, such narrations show that music did exist among the companions and was judged according to purpose and context. Music that did not distract the heart from Allah, did not contain immoral words, and did not harm the spirit of worship was accepted. In the generation after the companions, opinions began to differ. Some scholars, such as Sayyid ibn al-Musayyab and Hassan al-Basri, considered music makruh, disliked, or haram, because during their time, music was often used in gatherings of drinking and immorality. However, many Tabi'in scholars and early Sufis saw music as permissible when it softened the heart and increased love for worship. In the early days of Tasawwuf, music began to be used as a tool for dhikr, remembrance, and reflection. During the Umayyad, Abbasid, Seljuk, and Ottoman periods, music played a major role both inside and outside social life. It was used not only in art, but also in military and medical therapy. This side of music is too important to ignore. In Western civilization, during the Middle Ages, mentally ill people were often neglected and sometimes even executed as witches. But in the Islamic world, especially during the Ottoman Empire, music was used as a treatment for mental illness, and it was often successful. In the Umayyad era, music was common among both the elite and the public. Caliphs organized musical gatherings and invited singers and musicians to their palaces, while ordinary people sang and listened to religious songs and qasidas. In Mecca and Medina, musicians such as Ibn Misjah, Ibn Muhriz, and Ma'bad became famous. They blended Arab melodies with Persian and Byzantine musical styles. During the Abbasid era, music reached its golden age. Baghdad became the musical center of the Islamic world. Famous musicians like Ziryab influenced both art and education. At the Abbasid court, music theory, notation, and maqam systems were developed. Philosophers such as Kind and Farabi studied music as a science. Farabi's work, Kitab al-Musiki al-Kabir, became one of the most important studies in this field. In the Seljuk period, music was used in Sufi, military, and royal contexts. In Mevlevi, Yesevi, and other Sufi orders, Sema, dhikr, and nasheeds were central. Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi and his circle viewed music as a means to spiritual ecstasy. Instruments such as the ney, ribab, kudum, and nakare became popular in this era, and the foundations of the meta, Ottoman military band tradition, were also laid during this time. In the Ottoman Empire, music became a rich and multidimensional cultural field. It was divided into four main branches: court music, Sufi music, military, mehter music, and folk music. Even the sultans themselves were interested in music. For example, Sultan Selim III was a composer, and Sultan Abdul Hamid II played the piano. He also had a deep love for traditional Turkish instruments, such as the oud and kanun. At the same time, Abdul Hamid II was known as a spiritual master and a devout believer. The Mevlevi lodges and Sufi tekkes represented the spiritual side of music, while mehter music reflected the military and motivational side. During this era, the maqam system became fully developed and hundreds of compositions, hymns, ilahis and songs were created. When we come to modern times, something interesting stands out. The famous musician Yusuf Islam, Cat Stevens, completely abandoned music after becoming Muslim. This was because some groups in the UK who guided him to Islam had extreme views, and he thought music was haram. But years later, after studying other madhhabs, he realized that there was no absolute ruling declaring all music haram. He eventually picked up his guitar again. Once he believed music was forbidden, but over time he came to see that it was not. Now think about it. A man with such a beautiful voice and talent, if he performs in the UK or Europe and sings songs that remind people of Allah and spread Islamic values, wouldn't that inspire people and attract youth to Islam? Would the scholars of the past, if they lived today and saw these times, still hold the same opinions? When they gave their fatwas, did they not consider the conditions of their era? Even acts of worship like salah can be haram at specific times, such as when the sun is directly overhead or right after sunrise. Fasting is also haram on days like Eid. So if even worship can become haram depending on time and situation, it means the same principle was applied to music. Music was considered haram within certain conditions. But today, when music is used not for entertainment or sin, but to remind people of Islam, faith and Allah, it is not only permissible, but something that should be supported. Everyone remembers the movie The Message, Al-Risala. Didn't its music move people deeply, bringing both tears and spiritual emotion? Did you know that before the film was made, Al-Azhar University in Egypt was consulted for fatwas about it? So how could scholars who approved that movie also allow such powerful music? Because when music is used to convey Islamic meaning, lift the soul and bring hearts closer to Allah, it should be used. Music can motivate, inspire and touch the heart, and in that sense, it becomes a tool for good. Sufi and tekke music stood right at the center of these discussions. Throughout history, many books and treatises were written both for and against it, and even today, countless academic studies continue to explore this topic. Now, leaving these debates aside, we will explain how Islamic scholars themselves have understood and placed music within the framework of Islam. Views of Islamic scholars. Imam Ghazali. It is not possible to fully summarize everything Imam Ghazali discussed in Ihya Ulum al-Din about this topic, but we can highlight the most important points to give a clear idea of his perspective. Ghazali begins by explaining what Sema, in the broad sense, music, means, then discusses its ruling, and finally, its conditions of legitimacy. According to him, Sema is something that moves the heart, inspires it, and awakens meanings that already exist within the heart, but are not yet active. This definition shows that Ghazali saw music as something positive, as it stirs spiritual feelings and inner meanings. This gives us an important clue about his overall approach to music. When it comes to its ruling, Imam Ghazali first presents the different opinions of the companions and the tabi'in about the permissibility of listening to music. He then discusses Imam Shafi's view, who considered some forms of music makruh, disliked. Finally, he presents the arguments of those who called it haram and responds to each one in detail. Even this order shows Ghazali's balanced and open-minded approach to the issue. After that, Ghazali quotes Qadi Baidawi's opinion that listening to music is mubah, permissible. He supports this with evidence from the Qur'an, Sunnah, sayings of the companions and tabi'in, and other scholars. But he doesn't stop there. Ghazali also gives logical arguments to show that listening to music is permissible. In his book Ihya Ulum al-Din, under the section titled The Proof of the Permissibility of Listening to Music, Ghazali writes, "To say that listening to music is haram means that Allah will punish those who listen to it, but this is not something that can be known by reason alone. Therefore, we must rely on texts and nas and reasoning based on those texts. If there is no clear text or correct reasoning from it, then the claim that music is haram has no basis." After explaining in detail the effects of music on the listener, whether it comes from the human voice or musical instruments, Imam Ghazali concluded that music is generally permissible, mubah. He then examined and responded one by one to the arguments of those who considered it haram. After analyzing all opinions and comparing the evidences, Ghazali reached the following conclusion. Music, whether from voice or instrument, cannot have a single ruling. It can be haram, makruh, mubah, or mustahab, depending on the situation and intention. Here are his classifications. For young people filled with worldly desires and lust, music that excites those feelings is haram. For someone who spends too much time on music and makes it a daily habit, it is makruh. For someone who listens simply to enjoy a beautiful voice without any bad thoughts, it is mubah, permissible. For someone whose heart is filled with the love of Allah and who feels that music awakens only noble emotions, it becomes mustahab, recommended. Ghazali continued his analysis by saying that music is either mubah or mandub, recommended depending on the circumstances. It only becomes haram when it is associated with certain external factors. He listed 5 specific cases that can make music haram. If the singer is a woman and the listener fears that her voice will awaken sexual desire, then listening becomes haram. Not because of the music itself, but because of the fitna caused by the situation. A woman's voice is not haram by itself, but if it arouses desire, even listening to her reciting the Qur'an can become impermissible. If the musical instrument is one that is associated with sinful gatherings, such as those where alcohol is consumed, then using that instrument is haram, while other instruments remain permissible. If the lyrics of the song are corrupt, containing words against Islamic belief or morality, then singing or listening with or without music is haram. If a person, especially a young one, becomes obsessed with music and it only triggers lustful feelings, they should stay away from it. If music neither stirs lust nor spiritual feelings, but wastes one's time and prevents them from doing useful things, it is haram due to that effect. Ihya Ulum al-Din, page 279. From all this, we see that Ghazali's approach was serious, disciplined, and nuanced. He made it clear that the permissibility of music depends not on the sound itself, but on how it is performed, the intention behind it, and the effect it has on the listener's heart and actions. Junaid al-Baghdadi. The view of Junaid al-Baghdadi on music represents the balanced and moderate approach of the Sufi tradition. He neither completely rejected music nor allowed it without limits. Like Imam Ghazali, he considered music halal, as long as it did not lead to worldly obsession, lust, or negligence in worship, such as forgetting salah. If music increases love for Allah and strengthens spiritual feelings, then it is legitimate and beneficial. However, if it awakens worldly desires, ego, or lustful emotions, it approaches the haram ruling. Ibn Hazm 1. General Framework. According to Ibn Hazm, music and singing are among the things that are mubah, permissible. He said, to declare something haram means to claim that Allah has forbidden it. If Allah or His Messenger has not clearly forbidden it, then no one has the right to declare it haram based on their own reasoning. He emphasized those who say music is haram have no authentic evidence, sahih nas, to support their claim. 2. Qur'an evidence. Ibn Hazm rejected the interpretation that the phrase lahu al-hadith in Surah Luqman, verse 6, refers to music. He explained that this phrase is general, meaning idle or useless talk, and cannot be limited to music alone. Therefore, there is no verse in the Qur'an that declares music haram. 3. Hadith evidence. Ibn Hazm stated that the hadiths used to claim the prohibition of music are either weak or misinterpreted. He particularly criticized the hadith found in Sahih al-Bukhari that says, "Some people from my ummah will consider alcohol, silk, adultery, and musical instruments as halal." Ibn Hazm pointed out that this hadith appears in Bukhari's section on drinks as mu'allaq, meaning its chain of narration, isnad, is incomplete. Bukhari mentioned it without giving the full chain. Because of this, Ibn Hazm argued that the hadith cannot be considered fully authentic. He also noted that one of the narrators mentioned in some versions of this hadith is Hisham ibn Ammar, a scholar from Sham, Syria. Although Hisham was known as generally truthful, he was described by some hadith scholars as weak due to mistakes in transmission. Some reports even claimed he drank alcohol, which further harmed his reliability. For these reasons, Ibn Hazm concluded that no strong or reliable hadith exists that clearly forbids music, and therefore it remains permissible, mubah, in Islam. At this point, Ibn Hazm reasoned as follows: if a narrator is unreliable or the chain of narration is broken, that hadith cannot be used as proof to declare something haram. Therefore, according to him, this particular hadith cannot serve as valid evidence. He emphasized that there is no sahih nas, neither a clear Qur'an verse nor an authentic hadith that declares music to be haram. On the contrary, Ibn Hazm highlighted the authentic hadiths in which the Prophet ﷺ allowed young girls to play the daf and sing in his home. He also mentioned that some companions listened to music, and the daf was used during weddings. There is no ijma, consensus, among the companions that music was haram. Ibn Hazm believed that taking pleasure in a beautiful sound is part of human nature, fitra. Declaring this natural gift haram would be against the way Allah created humans. Music itself is not harmful. What makes it haram is its content and context. If the lyrics promote sin, disbelief, or immorality, it is haram. If it is mixed with alcohol or immoral gatherings, it is haram. If it leads to wasting time and negligence, it can be makruh. But if it brings peace, joy, or remembrance of Allah to the heart, it is mubah, even beneficial. Ibn Hazm's final conclusion was clear: music and singing are halal. Any prohibition applies only to corrupt content or sinful use. Therefore, a general statement such as music is haram has no basis in Islamic texts. Rumi's music views. For Rumi, music is the voice of the soul turning toward Allah. In the opening verses of the Masnavi, when he describes the cry of the reed flute, nay, he is actually speaking about the human soul. Listen to the reed, how it tells a tale complaining of separations. Here, the nay symbolizes the human being, lamenting its separation from its true home, Allah. Thus, music becomes a spiritual language that expresses both humanity's distance from Allah and its longing to return to Him. For Rumi, Sema is not just a dance or movement, it is the manifestation of divine love. It is the state in which the Sufi, overwhelmed by love for Allah, enters a spiritual ecstasy through dhikr, ilahi, or music. Sema is not itself an act of worship, but it is a state that leads to worship. Rumi saw Sema as the outward expression of divine love. In the Mevlevi tradition, Sema represents an overflow of the heart's ecstasy. But Rumi makes one thing very clear: Sema is not a game of the ego, it is the remembrance of the soul. In other words, when Sema is done only for entertainment, show, or worldly pleasure, it becomes haram. But when it is performed to remember Allah, awaken the heart, and feel divine love, it is halal and even virtuous. Rumi also emphasized that every person's heart reacts differently to music. For some, it brings peace and closeness to Allah. For others, it causes heedlessness. He said, "Whoever feels joy when Allah is mentioned, for him Sema is halal. But whoever performs Sema for worldly reasons, for him it is haram." So Rumi taught that music can open the heart to Allah, and its ruling depends not on the sound itself, but on the intention and state of the heart. When joined with faith, music and Sema become acts of devotion. When joined with the ego, they turn into heedlessness. Ibn Arabi's view. Ibn Arabi also developed a deep and symbolic understanding of music and sound. For him, sound and rhythm are reflections of the divine mysteries of creation. Music, in his view, is an echo of divine reality. He explained that sounds and vibrations are part of the cosmic order. When Allah said, "Kun," be, creation came into existence, and this command itself was the first divine sound. Thus, existence began with music. Every sound, every rhythm in the universe is a resonance of that original kun. According to Ibn Arabi, if music turns the heart toward its origin, Allah, it becomes a heavenly instrument. But if it directs the heart toward worldly desires, it becomes a veil of the ego. For him, Sema is not merely what the ear hears, but what moves the heart toward divine meaning. He taught that everything in the universe remembers Allah. The wind, the waves, the birds, all produce sounds that are forms of divine music. This understanding fits perfectly with his concept of Wahdat al-Wujud, the unity of being. Every sound, every being is a reflection of one single voice, the voice of Allah. Al-Farabi's view. According to Al-Farabi, music is a science built upon mathematical order and proportion. He was one of the first music theorists in history, and his most important work, Kitab al-Musiki al-Kabir, the Great Book of Music, became a foundational source for the study of music, both in the Islamic world and Europe for centuries. For Farabi, music is not a random form of entertainment, but a mathematical and spiritual discipline. He studied the length, frequency, and ratios of sounds, explaining that every note and melody reflects the cosmic harmony of creation. The harmony of the universe is the harmony of sounds. In other words, music is the audible reflection of divine order in the cosmos. Farabi also considered music a tool for healing the soul and moral education. He taught that each melody awakens different emotions depending on a person's temperament. Some makams bring sadness and self-reflection. Some bring joy and lightness of spirit. Some inspire courage, as seen in military music. For this reason, Farabi called music the medicine of the soul. When used properly, it strengthens character and purifies the heart. He believed music could serve both spiritual ecstasy and philosophical balance, but when used without measure, it becomes a toy of the ego. Therefore, like eating and drinking, moderation is the key principle. Ibn Rushd's view. Ibn Rushd, Averroes, was a philosopher, Maliki jurist, and physician. His approach to music was both philosophical and psychological. He believed that music is a natural human need. Allah created humans with a sense of beauty. The love of beauty is part of fitra, natural disposition. Therefore, enjoying a beautiful sound is as natural as admiring a landscape or smelling a pleasant fragrance. A person's pleasure in beautiful sounds is part of creation itself. To deny it is to deny human nature. For Ibn Rushd, music also has an ethical function. Influenced by Plato's philosophy, he believed that proper melodies can shape human character. If music creates balance and peace in the soul, it is beneficial. But if it stirs up desire and chaos, it becomes harmful. In a religious context, Ibn Rushd considered moderate and meaningful music permissible. He viewed melodic dhikr, or chanting in worship, as a natural and valuable part of devotion. The beauty of the voice is meaningful only when it turns the heart toward Allah. This understanding aligns with the views of Imam Ghazali and Ibn Arabi. All three saw music as a bridge between the soul and the divine when used with sincerity. As a physician, Ibn Rushd also saw music as a form of psychological therapy. He noted that melody and rhythm can influence the heartbeat, breathing, and emotional state, making music useful in medical treatment. This idea later became the theoretical foundation for the Ottoman tradition of healing through music. Many Sufi scholars permitted music in spiritual gatherings, Sema, where music and singing were used as a means of devotion and spiritual elevation. There have been several Islamic scholars, both classical and contemporary, who have held the view that music is not inherently haram in Islam. Here are some notable scholars who permitted or allowed certain types of music. Many scholars agree that the way music is used and its impact on the listener determine whether it is permissible, halal, or impermissible, haram. 1. The role of intention, niyyah. In Islam, actions are judged by intentions. Indeed, actions are but by intentions. Bukhari and Muslim. If someone listens to sensual or vulgar music to enjoy its immoral messages, it becomes a sin because the intention itself is wrong. If someone listens to upbeat, non-explicit music to boost their mood without neglecting their religious duties, many scholars would argue that this is not sinful. 2. The impact of music, athar. If music motivates good behavior, e.g., uplifting, inspiring lyrics, it can be seen as neutral or even positive. If music leads to sinful behavior, e.g., explicit lyrics encouraging haram activities, then it becomes problematic. 3. Practical application, haram music, explicit, vulgar, or content that makes one neglect prayer or leads to sinful actions. Halal music, instrumental, uplifting, or neutral music that does not contradict Islamic values. So yes, your intention and the type of music matter. If it helps you rather than harms you spiritually, it is not necessarily haram. Music can be considered permissible as long as it brings a person closer to Allah, or at least does not distance them from Him. However, when it begins to prevent a person from fulfilling their duties as a servant of Allah or leads them toward lust and worldly desires, then it leaves the circle of what is permissible, mubah, and enters the forbidden haram domain. In this context, it is important to remember the well-known hadith narrated by Bukhari and Muslim. What is halal is clear, and what is haram is clear, and between them are doubtful matters. Each person knows themselves best. As the saying goes, whoever knows themselves knows their Lord. A true believer must seek Allah's pleasure in every action. If something cannot be done in the presence of Allah, then it should not be done in private either, for that is the path of heedlessness. Even so, Islam does not forbid joy or pleasure within lawful boundaries. As Imam Rabbani wrote in his Maktubat, the Sharia encompasses all forms of true happiness. The halal circle is wide enough for joy and satisfaction. Therefore, music, when kept within these moral and spiritual limits, can remain a source of beauty, comfort, and remembrance of Allah. On our channel, we bring to life more than 250 Islamic stories, the lives of important figures in Islam, the companions, prophets, and their nations through animations. What were those times like? What challenges did they face? We recreate these moments based on the Qur'an, the Sunnah, and authentic Islamic history books. We believe that the knowledge we revive from forgotten sources will strengthen your faith and serve the cause of Islam. Our channel is not limited to history alone. We also explore the connection between Islam and science. We highlight the miracles in the Qur'an and their relevance to the modern world, presenting them with the explanations of Islamic scholars. This way, we aim to strengthen faith through reason as well. We kindly ask you not only to subscribe, but also to share, like, and comment on our videos. This will help us reach more people. Today, with more than 500,000 subscribers and tens of millions of monthly views, we are reaching audiences across the world. We provide subtitles in over 40 languages, so please activate the CC button in your YouTube settings and choose your language. We also offer dubbing in 20 languages, and God willing, this number will continue to grow until we support 90% of the world's languages. Your support is vital. With just one click, you can contribute to this mission. You can also share your topic suggestions in the comments. Your feedback motivates us and helps us shape the future of our channel. May Allah be pleased with all of you. May He grant us paradise together with our loved ones. Life is short and every second is valuable. Let us keep our hearts alive by learning more about Islam and strengthening our faith. We ourselves try to watch 3 to 4 Islamic videos or lectures every day to remain within the circle of Islam. Because if we don't fill our time with this, empty distractions take over, pulling us away from prayer and faith. That is why channels like this are so important. May Allah protect you all. Subscribe now and don't miss these inspiring stories.